Hi everyone, my name's Ellie. I'm one of the occupational therapists in the SEN OT team. So this is our OT toolbox for school and home training. So we're hoping to give you some tips about how to teach skills to our students with SEN, whether that be at school or at home. Okay. So today we're going to look at how we understand how a child learns new skills. We're going to identify goals and strategies for improving their independence. And then we're going to use these new strategies for achieving these goals. So we are school-based OTs in our service, and we support with school-based occupations. So occupations are anything that's meaningful to a person in their life. And obviously, if you have a disability or you have, you're neurodiverse and you find engaging in occupations difficult, or you have physical difficulties, or perhaps you have problems with sensory processing that's affecting your functioning, or perhaps your mental health. There's lots of different things that can affect our everyday functioning. But if this starts to affect your meaningful occupations, this is when an occupational therapist is helpful. So if we relate that to the school-based context, because we just work in schools, in terms of learning activities, this could be anything from engaging in writing activities, anything from pre-writing to starting to learn to write, to forming your letters, to then all the way up to writing stories, essays, whether you need to complete maths work and can you record your ideas and you're working out those kind of difficulties. Can you engage in art? Can you use the tools that you need to engage? Or are there other subjects you need to learn and you're finding it difficult? This could relate to self-care, so using the toilet in school and at home, getting changed, getting dressed in the morning, following your routine, eating lunch. It could be school leisure-based activities, so whether that's playing with equipment in the playground, engaging in games, socialising with friends. It could be participating in clubs or going to after-school groups. And then this could also be linked to transitions. So transitions are anything from stopping one very small task to moving on to another, which some of our students find really, really hard, especially if they're really enjoying the task that they're doing. Or it's a task that they're not too motivated by that we want them to transition to. That could be quite hard. Or it could be transitions relating to a bigger kind of life context. So whether they're moving between key stages, they're moving from reception to year 1 or from year 6 to year 7, so going to secondary school, or year 11 to post 16, or even higher education. So we can support with transitions as well. And what we need to do is think about, as I've mentioned, occupations are the wider context, so the bigger activities that are meaningful to people that you want to do in everyday life. So that could be working, it could be socializing, joining a club, looking after your health, managing your money. So all of those occupations could be meaningful to a person. But within those occupations, there's very, very small activities that we need to do to be able to achieve the overall goal of the bigger occupation. So, for example, if your child wants to join a sports club, but there might be some difficulties with them knowing the rules of the game, knowing how to play with other people, or even just putting on their football trainers and lacing them up. But the overall occupation is to join the football club and to engage, in a meaningful activity, but to be able to do that well, and for them, maybe they want to learn to tie their shoelaces, or so that's a very, very small activity that they need to learn to then be able to engage in a meaningful occupation. And you can relate this to yourself as well. So perhaps this morning you might have either took your child to school and then you've gone to work yourself, or you've done something else that's meaningful to you. So your occupation, or you're working in school at the moment, which is an occupation in itself. We don't always necessarily want to work, but we kind of have to. So whether it's meaningful or not, you know, is then subjective to each person. But think about that, but then think about all the different things that you've had to do this morning to be able to just get to where you are right now. All of those tiny activities. And imagine if you'd had difficulties with any of them, that would then have impacted on your ability to complete your overall occupation. So this is where, you know, OTs come in and we look at the very small steps that our children need to be able to do the overall activities of everyday living. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to get you to think a little bit like an OT now. So we're going to use what we call the PEO model. So this represents the person, the occupation, and the environment. And what we do when we look at students, we consider all of these different areas to see what it is, or the barriers that are preventing them developing their life skill or their overall occupation. So if we think about the person or the child, for in our case, we need to consider their strengths, because we're a strengths-based discipline, and we want to use what they like and what they can do, you know, as part of to develop their skills. So we think about strengths, then we look at areas of need. We think about the person's interests, what motivates them, what do they like doing, especially other special interests, you know, with our autistic students. What skills do they have? For example, are they left right-handed? What can they do already? Can they sequence activities, so put them in the right order? Can they use both hands cooperatively, together? What are their fine and their gross motor skills like? Their posture? What is their cognition like and their executive functioning? So can they plan ahead? Can they organise themselves? How much language do they understand? And this is where we can work closely with speech and language therapists. So how much are we going to have to develop our language to then support them to learn a new skill? Do they need visuals, which is probably most likely yes. A lot of our students with SEN really benefit from visual prompts, and visuals help take away the adult as well. So this reduces their dependency on people, so they become more independent. So visuals are really helpful, but I'll talk about that a bit more later. What mood are they in as well? Are they regulated enough to be able to sit and then listen and learn? If not, then what can we do about that? Are there other factors, some physical factors with the person that might be affecting their functioning? Are they tired? Are they hungry? Do they need the toilet, but they can't maybe express that? Or are they experiencing other pain, for example, constipation? And can they actually attend for long enough to be able to do the activity? If not, then maybe we can look at, you know, what we can do about that. Think about the environment. So we can think about the physical environment. So where are they sitting when they're trying to learn a new skill? Is this suitable? Is the table, is it high enough or low enough? Is their chair the right, you know, posture? Are they sitting with both feet on the floor? Or can we introduce other things that will help them sit more comfortably? Or can we give them more movement breaks? And is the environment accessible for that? Think about the sensory environment. So is it too loud when they're trying to do focused learning or trying to learn a new skill? Is it too busy? Is it too visually stimulating? Sometimes there might be so much on the walls that the students can't focus because it's just too busy. So can we change that? Can we look at lights? Are they too bright, or do they need to be brighter, or does the student need more stimulation? So thinking about all those different things of the environment and the ways we can manage that. Also the actual occupation, so the activity that we want them to do. We can think about, is this meaningful to them? That's the first question really. And if it's not, how can we make it more fun? How can we sell it to them so we can teach them a skill that we feel that they will need or that they actually want to learn, but we need to make it more fun. So they're not bored and they don't lose interest quickly. How can we maybe adapt the occupation, so the task, and break it down into smaller steps? Or could we introduce some equipment or something that will make it easier for them? So that could make the occupation a bit easier. Or could we, I think again, always breaking it down into small steps and actually looking at where they're having difficulty with that occupation. So this is kind of how OTs would approach a difficulty. And we do lots and lots of observations. So don't think that we're just wasting time if we're observing a student. And we want to observe them in different contexts as well, because that will give us more of an idea of what it is that's actually affecting the student developing those skills. Because this can change, the PEO model changes can sometimes depend on the context as well. So just to get you thinking like an OT, an example I have is a student I worked with as well, who in terms of the P, so herself, she was in reception class and she was finding it really, really hard to engage sometimes, not all the time, but she found it difficult when the environment got quite busy. And she also, when it got noisy as well, she found that a little bit painful. But she could generally manage it sometimes, but sometimes she couldn't. And then she tended to either the fight or flight mode kicked in and she would escape. So she would go to a classroom which was next door and it was all open. So it was kind of a safe place for her. And then she sometimes would take off her clothes as well when she was completely overwhelmed. So we were just wondering what the triggers were. We're thinking about for her, why, you know, obviously what is it that she's struggling with and why would she take off her clothes? So we're thinking perhaps some sensory processing difficulties. And then socially though, she was very, very motivated to be in the class and she loved being beside her peers. She was learning more language so she could articulate a bit better what she wanted, or she'd take people to show them what she needed. So she had lots of positives. She was able to dress herself when she wanted to wear clothes or when she was able to tolerate wearing clothes. So she had good skills in that sense. And then she was able to sequence activities quite well. And one of the main activities that the school and home wanted to develop was her toilet training. So what we found was when she did use the potty, she knew what to do. She knew that she had to clean herself. She knew where to go. She just wasn't using it very often. So we were thinking about how we could kind of introduce ways to support her to learn the skill of using the potty and the toilet overall. But we were kind of observing her in class to see what the barriers were. So in terms of the P, that was kind of where she was at. In terms of the environment, she was obviously got overwhelmed easily when the environment got busier and noisier, and also she could get visually distracted quite quickly. So when the students started moving around, it got noisier, but it also got visually busier. So this is when she would take herself to the quieter classroom next door. So we were thinking about her using the next door classroom as a safe space for her to go to when she was either feeling overwhelmed or she wanted to take her clothes off as well, because it was obviously a safeguarding concern being around the other students. And the school wanted to respect her privacy, so she could go there when she was feeling overwhelmed and taking her clothes off. And it was also a quieter place where she could engage in learning tasks, which she did really well when she was regulated. So it kept going back to her, the P, and whether she was regulated or not. So we had to try and work out what it was that was affecting her regulation. And then when we looked at her when she used the potty and or the toilet, because she was kind of using both sometimes, like I said, she was able to complete the activity. She had a good awareness of what to do. We'd use social stories to help her understand how to use the toilet. Visuals were used, but it was just that sometimes she wasn't using the toilet, she was avoiding, or she was having accidents as well, which seemed quite random. We just couldn't work out what it was. But looking at the PEO and the whole context, and then looking at her, we found that she was actually constipated. So what was happening was she was in so much pain that she couldn't express it verbally. So her sensory processing difficulties were heightened when she was in pain. So she couldn't manage the environment as very well. She couldn't engage in the occupation of going to the toilet because she was in too much pain. So what she would then do, the P, is then take off her clothes because she couldn't tolerate wearing her clothes because again she became tactile defensive, and then she sadly just got very overwhelmed and not very much helped her at that time. We used different sensory strategies to help her feel calm, and some worked and some didn't, but we found that underlying difficulty was her constipation. So that is better managed now. She's much happier in herself. She's better regulated. And now she's using the toilet a lot more consistently. There's Peppa Pig stickers everywhere all over the toilet because we want to use her interests. But that's just an example of, the underlying difficulty, which was her constipation. So it was mainly the P in the PEO model that was affecting her. But we were using other strategies to help her manage her other needs. But actually, when she's in pain, her sensory processing difficulties were heightened, and her ability to learn new skills and to tolerate being in school were a lot less. So that's just an example of how we use the PEO model in that issue. So how do we learn new skills? So as I've mentioned already, before you're starting to teach a new skill, you have to consider, is the child familiar with the task or purpose? Do they actually know why they're learning a skill or what they're doing it for? Because that really helps. It might help their motivation. If you say to a child, we're going to learn to tie our shoelaces because then we can go to this club or we can do these things, rather than just we're going to tie our shoelaces. And that can really help students, especially those with autism who have that understanding. Does the child know how to start, so to initiate and end the task? Does the child know what order to do the task in? So I've mentioned that already. That's what we call sequencing. Do they know? Can they show you what order to do it in? Are they showing some signs? A bit like the student I worked with who she knew exactly where to go to use the potty. She knew what to do, but it was other things that were affecting her using it. Is she regulated enough to be able to learn the task? So my student, for example, just wasn't regulated because she was in so much pain. So we couldn't consistently work on her using the toilet because she wasn't regulated. So that was the key really. And then also, can the child attend for long enough to complete all of the steps? It's so important to be able to have the right attention span to then learn a new skill. And if the child isn't ready or can't attend for that long, we need to actually think, okay, maybe it's the task that we're expecting them to do, or we can change our goals and our expectations for that child. So what do your children need to do to learn? So we would say if you're going to teach a new task, as I've said already, we would observe a lot. So look at what your student or child is doing in the task, but don't interfere. Don't try and help them initially. Just watch and have a look at what they're doing. And then you can ask yourself these questions, and you can come back to this slide if you're teaching any skill, and you can use it as a kind of recap. So what can they do well? Do they have an overall knowledge of the steps? So do they know about the sequencing? Can they do some bits of the activity really well? So you think, okay, they've got that bit, but it's this other bit that they're finding hard. And if you show them what to do, and I'll talk about that again in a little while, can they copy you? Or do they need more help, or they might need more hands-on support? If they can copy you in some bits, then that's a really good sign. It's a good skill that they're able to kind of learn visually. Do they know what to do? Do they miss a step, perhaps, or do they lack some of the skills? Might be physically they don't have the skills to do it, but they know what they need to do. And are they making mistakes? Are they rushing? Sometimes our students rush because the activity is too hard, or because they want to get it over with as soon as possible as well, which is when it's too hard. So that's a sign that maybe we need to make it easier or find different ways to help them. And are they holding the tool in an awkward way, kind of a not very helpful way? And can we look at that? So if you're asking yourself all of these questions, this is when you know kind of which areas to focus on and how to kind of start addressing it. So how do you learn a new skill? I've mentioned this already. Firstly, we need to be motivated. We need to want to learn that new skill and have a reason or a purpose. We need to have regular practice. So repetition for our students is so important. Yeah, and regular practice. And we would say little and often. So daily practice rather, for a short amount of time, rather than like a long bit of practice on one day. And then by the end of the week, they'll have forgotten what they learnt. And then they'll get frustrated if you try and do it again for a long amount of time. So little and often to practice new skills is really helpful. And learning the skills in the environment that they're going to use those skills is really helpful too. Which is why we're a school-based OTs, we always try and go into the classroom, working with the students and the teaching assistants or the LSAs and the teachers to model what we want the students to do, rather than taking the students out, because our students with SEN struggle to transition and to translate those skills into new environments. So we try and work in the actual environment where they're going to use the skills. Always go from easier to harder, and never underestimate how easier to make it. You'll know your child best, but always start with easy, because then the child experiences success quickly, and that will help with their motivation. Always go at their own pace, and please don't rush them. I know there's different demands in schools or at home especially, but try and go at their own pace and try and do it their own way. And then always, we learn skills by making mistakes. So it's okay if a student makes mistakes. You can reinforce that making mistakes is how we learn, because that can be really hard for some students and their self-esteem and to feel like they're making mistakes. But it's really important to reinforce that we can't learn again if we don't make mistakes. And in terms of the making mistakes, we tend to use a coaching model as OTs. So and this is really helpful for students with who have coordination difficulties, who have diagnoses like Down syndrome or developmental coordination disorder. So we use what we call coaching. It's kind of a model where if the student does make a mistake, we can talk through that mistake. But getting them to kind of consider, so where do you think you went wrong? What could we do to make it easier? Or what do you think? So giving them kind of control and getting them to cognitively think through how to correct their mistake, not going in and doing it for them. But with students with autism, sometimes teaching them initially with the correct sequence can be the better way of teaching a new task. So because if they learn a skill in a certain way, but they're not doing very well in that skill, and then we go back and try to relearn a different way, or they can find that quite hard. So from the very beginning, kind of having that sequence, especially visually as well, so they can learn that skill is really helpful. Okay. We definitely say don't rush the learning, as I mentioned already. Give them time to to make mistakes, to try and problem solve on their own. It's really tempting to step in and show them what to do or do it, but just give them a bit more time and to see if they can problem solve, because problem solving is a key that everybody needs in everyday life. And it helps with independence. So if we step in all the time to help students, then they're not going to learn to problem solve themselves. You can give them cues, but don't tell them what to do. So by cues, we mean you can give them physical cues, so kind of even just pointing to something that might help them in the activity, make it a bit easier, but you don't have to say anything. You could give them a slight verbal cue, not even telling them, but just saying, "Oh, did you forget something?" Or "What about, have you thought about this?" Or physical gestures as well might help. But allowing them to struggle. It might be painful to watch, but it will help in the long term. It will help them be more independent. And then coaching, as I mentioned already. So don't adjust. Give them cues, but don't tell them what to do. And we have to be a detective as well. So that means, like I said, really looking at a PEO model, looking at exactly where it is they're having difficulties, and then we'll know how to help. So going to let you have a look at this video now and be a detective yourself. So I'll just move this, sorry. Okay, so when you're watching this video, think about, what does she do well? What does she know what to do? And is she making any mistakes? Okay, so I'll just give you a few seconds to think about those questions and come up with your own answers. I turn the sound off for that video as well because it's in French. Apologies if you are French. But the main thing was actually looking at what the child was doing. And feel free to have a look at that again if you need to. So what I observed, if you'd like some feedback, so what she does well, she started well. I think she it seemed like a verbal instruction from the teacher. And then she started really well. She looked like she was really motivated to do the activity. She was using, I couldn't really see very well, but it looked like a functional left-handed grasp on her pencil. And then she was also using her right hand to stabilize the paper. So, in that sense, she kind of knew what to do. She seemed to know from the instruction what to do initially. And she seemed very motivated to engage in the task. The nice smile at the end was a sign that she seemed to be enjoying herself. Thinking about, does she know what to do? Initially, she did seem to know, but then she seemed to look back to the teacher again for either reassurance, and she stopped what she was doing. So I wonder if maybe she's reliant on that adult to remind her. So perhaps she could do with a visual to prompt her of kind of what she needs to do in that task so that she's less reliant on the adult to keep checking on her. And that would help her independence as well. And so like a visual checklist of what she can do. And is she making any mistakes? I guess mistakes is a strong word because she was trying to do her work, but perhaps she didn't know what to do. So in terms of mistakes, I don't think she was making mistakes really. I think she could perhaps, we could look at how she sits on her chair because she seems to be a bit of a movement seeker. So it could be that, or she finds it hard to sit on a chair for very long. So we could look at whether she needs more movement breaks before she's expected to sit down on a chair and to focus on learning. Or maybe she needs a bit more postural support on the chair that she's using to help her sit better for longer. So in terms of that, I don't think necessarily it's her making a mistake. I think there's some adaptations to the environment that could be done. So yeah, that's some kind of observations that I saw. You might have seen more as well. It's really hard to know the context as well. So that's why we need to observe students in different contexts to kind of see what they can do. But that was just an example for you. Okay. So then we need to think about what goals we can set for this student or for any of our students, because goals are really important for us to stay on track and to support our students to work towards kind of developing these skills. And we tend to use SMART goals. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So being specific is really helpful because you know exactly what the student is going to work on. Being measurable is good because you can then know how much progress they've made, you know, and this can be shown in, for example, annual review reports and within outcomes to show how they're working towards those outcomes. Is it achievable? This is the biggest difficulty, I think, that sometimes staff or parents have is we might set unrealistic goals for our students. So then if the students don't achieve that goal, perhaps it's more our fault that they haven't because we've made the goal not very achievable than the student's fault. So we really, really need to think about whether our goals are achievable. Are they relevant as well? You know, for OTs, it's all about function and are they working on functional skills that the student's going to use or that they're motivated to learn? So are they relevant? And have we got the student involved in setting those goals? And have we asked them if we're able to, you know, is this something you want to learn? So it's relevant to them. And are they time bound as well? So, you know, it's good to have an achievable time frame to learn skills. And we have to be realistic about how much time it takes to learn a skill. And this can be very dependent on the student's needs, their diagnoses. Some students can learn a skill in 1 week. Some students will need 3 months to learn the same skill. So we need to know the student and we need to think about how realistic our timeframes are. So, and we'd also say that smaller goals are much better as well for our students because smaller goals allow the student to achieve success quickly, as I mentioned previously. And it will help with their motivation as well. So don't worry if the goal is very, very small, because you can set more goals. But yeah, making sure they're smaller and giving them more time to achieve the goal is better because it will help them stay motivated and put less pressure on them as well. Okay. So it's all about, in a way, managing our expectations of what the student can do, not necessarily setting unrealistic goals for them. Okay. So now you have your toolbox. So now you want to kind of show the student how to do an activity. So we use modelling a lot. We are recording more videos to model how to do activities, which we hope will be helpful. But modelling in person is really important. And we use the I do, we do, you do process for modelling. So when you're learning a new skill or you're supporting a student to use a new skill, always show them how to do that skill yourself. And always use really simple language if you know they need that, because you don't want to make it too complicated. And always talk through the process of what you're doing. So explaining what you're doing with simple language, because that will help the student to remember the sequence. And some students will make up their own language for when they're learning a new skill for whatever it is they're doing. So use their language as well, you know. If this helps them remember, then that's fine. But we would say start with I do it, then we'll do it together, which is really helpful because then that's where the coaching can come in or where you can use the cues. So you're not you're not stepping in and doing it for them. You're just using subtle cues like physical gestures, or asking them, have you thought about this? That's the we do part. So you're kind of supporting them to do it, but you want them to do it more independently, because then they're more able to then do it by themselves. So I do, we do, you do. Okay. Making it really obvious is really helpful as well. So you might feel a bit stupid, but really, exaggerating your movements can be really helpful. And especially when you're showing a skill for the first time. So making it really obvious is really, really helpful. And always show the student the right way to do something, or the most helpful way first. But then once you've done this, you can then, play around with it. You can make it silly. You can do silly things on yourself. So for example, if you're teaching them how to get dressed, and you're practicing the sequence and you've got the supports in place, like visuals and how to do it, and they're learning, you can then see if they know when you've made a mistake. So you could put your jumper on backwards and see if they notice, or I can't find my pocket, where is it? And if you've got your jumper on back to front, you can kind of play around with it and make it silly to show them that it's okay to make mistakes as well, and to help develop their awareness. You can kind of use a spot the difference way of kind of teaching that skill. So is it the right way, or am I doing it a different way, and what's different? And that will really help their awareness. You can use adaptations. So if the student's struggling with the task and you're finding that really they're really engaged, they really want to handwrite, for example, but they just really struggle to hold a regular pencil. So why don't we just adapt the activity, because they're so motivated to do it, and if that's the only thing that's affecting them improving, we can just give them a different type of pencil, for example. Or the same with kind of feeding skills. Can we look at the way they're holding their knife and fork, and if they really want to eat and they're motivated to feed themselves, let's look at adaptations that we can make that will help them. And this will depend, on their needs. They might have physical disability, so they might need adaptations like this anyway. Scissor skills as well. If they really want to use scissors, but they're finding it hard to put their fingers in the regular scissors and it's a bit dangerous, then we can use adapted scissors as well. So these are just some examples, really. For example, the cord on the zip as well. If they really want to do their own zip on their coats, but they're finding it tricky, and they're giving up, perhaps putting a little cord on the zip that will make it easier for them to hold to then zip up. So they're completing the task and they're experiencing success and they're working on their independence, but we're just adapting it slightly. This might not be forever, obviously, until their fine motor skills develop, but these are just simple adaptations we can make to keep the child motivated. And we have different tools as well. So this is backward chaining. So basically, to summarize it, this shows it really well, but we would break down the steps of the activity. So this example is washing hands. And what we want to do in backward chaining is, the overall goal is to get the child to complete each step independently, but they might not be able to initially. So we help them with all of the steps apart from the last one. And then they do the last activity themselves. So you can see in round one, it's dry their hands on a towel. Okay, so we do all of the steps for them and they dry their hands on a towel. And the next time we do it, we would use visuals as well with this. And we can tick it off if we need to, because the students are quite motivated by that. The next thing we expect them to do is to turn off the faucet or tap. So we'll do that. And then the next one is we expect them to rinse their hands by themselves without any help. So you can see that they're gradually learning the steps themselves. They might start to remember the sequence, and also experience success, but in very small steps. And it takes away the pressure of the expectation that they have to do it all on their own, because some students want your help. So we want them to experience success in very small steps. And this will help them to learn the sequence as well of an activity and also be more independent, but it will take some time to learn these steps. So that's backward chaining, and then you can also do it the other way around. So forward chaining. So that's when you do the reverse. So you complete, they complete the first step, sorry, and then you complete all of the other steps. So backward chaining is more helpful for activities like students learning how to wipe their bottom, for example. So you would help them with all of the other steps and then you give them a go at wiping their bottom. Whereas forward chaining can be more helpful for activities like tying shoelaces. So I've seen this in a lot of secondary schools where kids have SEN and they've learned to tie their shoelaces a long time ago, then they forget, but they've used forward chaining to learn their shoelaces. So they always tend to remember the first step where you make the loop, but then they can't remember the last step. So then we could use forward chaining again to kind of reteach those skills, and with visuals as well would be really helpful. So this is forward chaining. So think about if you're going to use forward chaining or backward chaining, which activity is more suitable to use it with. Again, we would always say use visuals for our students with SEN. They're so vital, because what they do is they take away the need for the student to have an adult to prompt them for what they need to do. And we don't want our students to be dependent on adults for their whole lives. We want them to be independent learners, to be independent in their life skills. So visuals are the key kind of to helping with that independence. And it doesn't have to be just pictures. I'll give some examples of what other visuals are helpful, but this can really support students to be more independent. And the metaphor we use is, if you imagine learning to drive, initially you do need an adult with you to teach you how to drive, and they guide you and they teach you the kind of how to be safe. But then when you pass a driving test, you are able to drive independently, but the only thing that remains the same is the visuals that you need. And the visuals help you if there's a diversion, like in the picture, if something goes wrong, if you're not sure what to do, you can go back to the visuals, and well, hopefully on all roads there's a visual that will direct you of what to do, and you won't need an adult to help you. So this is why we can't really emphasize enough why visuals are so important. For children who struggle to sequence and remember sequences, and to know what to do, visuals are so important for life skills and functional skills. So these are just examples of someone buttoning their shirt. There might be a visual of what the students expected, so to write a bit smaller. Oh, sorry. Whether they can wipe their bottom and they know what to do, so that's for toileting. There's one about brushing teeth as well. And we use visuals every day. If you think about the prompts you use yourself, you might write shopping lists down, or you might write them in your phone. That's you making a visual to help you remember what to do. You might use a diary, whether that's online or a written diary, but that's you remembering and what to do in your day. So we all use visuals, and they're so helpful, and we need to support our students to use them too, for their independence. Now next boards are brilliant, because for those students who struggle to transition again, like we said, this will help them know what's coming next. And if you have no concept of time as well, and you don't know what's happening during the day, you're not going to want to engage in tasks, or you might run away from a task if you don't know how long it's going to last. So having those now next visuals are really important, or those visual timetables. Having a task planner, this is the one on the left with a little checklist. So like the student in the video, she perhaps could have done with that if she was able to read and follow the instructions of what she needed to do in that task. Timers as well. Visual timers are really helpful to help students transition from one activity to another, or to know when something's going to end. Because if you don't know, it can be very anxiety producing, and they might verbally keep asking you what's going to happen, when's it's going to happen, because they're anxious and they're checking. Whereas if you have a visual in place, that will hopefully reduce that anxiety and they won't need to check. They will trust that whatever they're asking is going to happen in the day. And then social stories are really helpful as well. For example, if you want to support a student to use a pencil grip, for example, this might help them remember where to place their fingers and how to do it by themselves. And you, again, take away the need for an adult to keep showing them and keep modelling them. If they can just have that visual, it will really help them do it independently. So it's all about supporting their independence. Visual modelling as well is amazing. There's so many good things on YouTube. And we're making our own videos at the moment too that we can share with schools and parents of how to model kind of different activities, which we hope will be helpful. But if you look on YouTube for different functional skills like tying laces, there's lots of different types. Using songs to help teach skills. There's lots of toilet training songs, which are really good, and they're very repetitive, which is really helpful, and they talk through the steps. So again, breaking it into small steps. If the child likes singing and they like learning through music, then use songs. There's apps on iPads that you can get as well, and Ian's Laces is one, or I Do Getting Dressed, I Do Hygiene. There's already lots of visual sequences already made for different activities. Twinkle is quite good too. So we have a lot of resources as well that we can share with you, and so you can contact us if you need to get those. Okay. So then we would say, have a go, see how you get on with those, teaching those skills. A really good way of supporting students independent as well, which is another visual support. But this helps students to problem solve more independently. So it's called a goal, plan, do, check. So this helps students to think of a goal that they want to work on, and you can work with them. And then they have to put a plan together. So they think about what equipment they're going to need, or what supplies they're called here, what strategies they can use to help them do that activity or get to that goal. And then they do it, and then you go back and you recap and you're kind of problem solving. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, what can we do next time? And that's where you can do it again, but you can add on the strategies, ways that they can help themselves better, and then give it another go. So this is a really nice goal, plan, do, check, a way of supporting the students to be more independent and to problem solve more independently. And if they don't understand the written instructions, you can just use visuals like this second tea party one shows. So, sorry, I went through that quite quickly. So now you've got your toolbox and you've got all these different ideas, you can use it. But just some things to consider. So when you're thinking about a time to learn new skills, decide when it would be a good time, okay? And consider kind of short and often rather than long periods of time, because then students lose motivation or they might get bored. So for example, daily for 10 minutes. And always, like we said, wait, give them time to process instructions, to think about what they're doing and to try and problem solve. And always wait until your child has done something until you give another instruction, because some students can only follow one instruction at a time or two. So that's important to consider as well. And then think about the environment as well. Just like the PEO model, is the environment clutter-free? That will be really helpful to avoid distractions. Is it quieter if the student struggles to focus? So reduce the background noise. Can they go somewhere for that specific time every day just to practice those skills? And it doesn't have to be on their own, they could go with peers. Or they have a workstation, they can take away any of the clutter that might be on that. If you're practicing this skill at home, perhaps yourself, or put your own phone away, or if you've got iPads nearby, they can be really distracting, and put them on flight mode or on silent so that there's less notifications and less distractions. And also in schools as well, I think some staff could be more mindful sometimes when you're going through a classroom and you can see students are really focusing and not interrupting that focus and not saying hello. Or I know it sounds quite mean, but if the student's really focusing on a skill, then it's really important that they need to attend and focus on that skill. So yeah, just being considerate really of the environment when students are learning skills. And mainly have fun, make it fun, make it motivating. That's the main, that will be the main motivator. So we can support with that as well, obviously. We have lots of different resources and ways to make learning skills fun. But yeah, that's what we would say, because then you'll enjoy yourself as well while you're supporting your students to learn valuable life skills. And giving them feedback as well. So kind of going through what they did. If you're giving praise, make the praise very specific. So I really liked it when you did that. And you look like you were trying really hard when you did that. And I can tell that this was difficult, but you kept going. Or this, rather than, good job or well done for doing this. And I like this, making it more specific. After they've done the task, you can go back through the list or the sequence and discuss or model where you think they might have had difficulty or what went well, just to help their self-awareness. And to help them problem solve. And then for students, especially those with autism, again, using like the first next boards, and consider having like a more preferred activity that the student really enjoys after practicing a new task, just to motivate them really. That would be helpful. And when they get stuck, consider that what your child is doing. So they might be doing the same thing again and again, but expecting a different outcome. Which I think we all do sometimes, and we get really frustrated. I think that's the definition of insanity. But perhaps if they keep doing the same thing again and again, they can't problem solve. So they might need you to step in and show them a different way, or can we adapt the task? If they're getting frustrated and shouting, if they keep asking for help and they want somebody else to take over, and they don't want to solve the problem, then maybe we need to go back to the detective work. Think about, is the task too hard? Can we make the steps smaller? Can we give them more achievable, smaller steps so that they'll experience success and they'll get less frustrated or shouting? Can we teach them in a different way? Can we, just manage our own expectations of what they can do? Or is it the wrong time? Can we try it at a different time for a shorter amount of time? So going back to the drawing board basically, and thinking about how we can change things, not necessarily expecting the student to change, because they would find that really, really hard. And if they're showing you that they're finding it hard, then it's obviously something that they need support with. If you're finding it really hard to know where to pinpoint where they're going wrong, videos are really helpful as well. So obviously with consent from parents, or in school, or obviously parents, you can video your child. But if you can't figure out what the difficulties are, videoing, you can slow it down, you can go back, you can really look at how the student is responding, how they're doing the task and what they're finding difficult and what the specific issue is. Okay. And when they do get stuck, again, think about questions like, has the task gone on too long? Have we just expected them to sit and attend for too long? Is it too difficult? Our expectations of them are too high? Is something else going on? A bit like the student I mentioned previously. Are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Are they in pain? Is something else affecting their ability to kind of learn this task? Are you yourself? It's understandable. It's really tricky working with our students sometimes. It's whether you're a parent, or a teacher, and a lot is happening in day-to-day life. And if you're not in the place where you're regulated, you're going to find it really hard to then regulate a child as well, to then support them to learn a new task. So think about yourself as well, and is there a better time to do this? And if you're really struggling and you've tried these different things, please ask an OT for support. That's what we're here for. Every school has a designated OT to support kind of generically as part of the universal offer. So even if your student doesn't have OT on their EHCP, the SENCO can kind of ask generic questions that we can kind of problem solve generically. It's just the direct work we can't provide unless a student has OT written into their EHCPs. If you have any questions, again, ask the SENCO who your designated OT is for your school, and they can problem solve with you. My email is at the front of the presentation. I'm the interim OT lead at the moment, so any bigger kind of service related questions, you can contact me as well. We have a little evaluation form, which is always helpful if you fill in. We'll update these as we go as well. And we also have other trainings that are coming up. We provide these every term. So even if these are out of date, whenever you're reading this, please use this link here, the Westminster Special School Training Calendar, and you will find all of the OT related trainings. If you're in Hammersmith, if you are in Westminster or Kensington and Chelsea, you can access these trainings for free. And it's not just OT. There's the visual impairment team, there's the autism outreach team, there's teachers for the hearing impaired. Carolyn Galenta, she's the speech and language therapist. She does some amazing training with CLCH speech and language therapists on speech and language strategies and social communication, and we all work quite closely together as well. So please check this calendar to see any trainings that you can access for free. But these are just our upcoming ones. So thank you for listening as well. And I hope this has been helpful. But yeah, take care. Thank you.